Good morning. How's everybody doing? Good? You're excited? You're ready to rock and roll? Yeah. No? I actually have that planned, if it works. Quick question. Does everybody have a handout? I know some people are coming in, but does everybody have a handout? No? Okay. If you guys just want to pass these straight back, that would be great, and that should be probably... Okay. So my name's Audrey Zapletal. I'm an occupational therapist. Oh, I guess we're doing a little... I don't know. Can you guys hear me in the back? You can hear me in the back? Okay. There's like a little movement going on. There is space here in the front if you need to. Anyway, my name's Audrey Zapletal. I'm a faculty member at Thomas Jefferson University in the Department of Occupational Therapy. And I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about child development, adolescent development, and some successful strategies that you can put into your daily routine. In addition to teaching, I also have a small private practice where I do see kids with a lot of sensory processing difficulties and work a lot on sensory modulation and also work on handwriting. So we'll touch a little bit about those kinds of issues that may come up with your child. And then last but not least, I also do research now with kids who have Klinefelters and XYY through Dr. Judy Ross's office at Thomas Jefferson University. So I do see some friendly faces, and I welcome you. And for those that I do not know, welcome, and please introduce yourself afterwards, okay? So I guess we'll get started. Quick question. Who here is a family member of a boy? I'm just trying to get an idea of my audience. All right, so we have boys, and then who here is a family member of a girl? Okay, great. And who here, your child is, let's say, under the age of 6? Okay. And who here, your child is between the ages of 7 and, let's say, 15, 16? Okay. And then over the age of 16. Wow. I think we have like an evenly distributed group. This is great. So let me tell you about the strategies and the way that they're presented, because I think some of the strategies maybe seem that they're more for younger kids, but they're really not. It's about taking these strategies and thinking how can you apply them for an older child, and I do give you ideas for the older child. And then if I don't answer your questions, I have a Q&A afterwards, or feel free afterwards. We'll probably have some time and ask those questions, okay? So I just want to make sure that if I don't cover something, feel free to ask. All right, so successful strategies for home and community participation. So the objective of this presentation is really to provide you with strategies, sensory motor strategies to promote success in home activities, routine activities, and in the community. And when we talk about the community, we're going to be talking about school, and we're going to be talking about those after-school activities, primarily sports. So I think we first have to get on the same page to make sure that my lingo matches your lingo. Basically, when we're talking about children with SCAs, we're talking about children who generally present with low muscle tone. They have decreased strength. They have low energy, or they seem to, kind of have a low endurance rate, or they talk about that I'm really, really tired. And they also have what's called dyspraxia, which is difficulty learning new skills. It takes them a little bit longer. And a good example of that is if your child has delayed milestones. They may be within the normal limit, but they're towards the later end ranges. And when we look at that, we think, well, they achieved the skill, which is great, but it just took a little bit longer. And so we call that dyspraxia, or motor planning. Then also, some kids with SCAs present with sensory challenges. And these are just a few to name them. Some kids are very tactily sensitive, where when you touch them, they have this unusual response of, oh my gosh, that hurts. And all you did was you touch them. Some kids have tactile discriminatory disorders, where when they're picking up something small, like if they're playing with beads or if they're using a utensil, they're kind of clumsy. And that is because they can't really feel that object in their hand, and that's related to a tactile issue. So that's tactile discrimination. Some of our kids really, really sensitive to sound. Other kids have a hard time filtering out what sounds they're supposed to be listening to and what sounds they're supposed to be focusing on. So we think of the classroom as a great example, as the kids are, they're supposed to be working at their desk, but your child, and I think I'm also an example of this, can hear the next person actually write and they're focusing on the person's writing because they hear the pencil against the paper, and they have a hard time filtering that out. Another example of something that may come up is some of our kids, especially in the younger years, they have this almost intense energy where they're seeking sensation. So they may kind of lean up against you to kind of feel their body, or they bump into things, or sometimes they talk a lot. But they're talking because they need that auditory input to help them regulate and stay at this arousal level that they're able to attend to the task. So it's kind of a phenomenon that we're still understanding is the seeking sensation, because it can be seeking movement, it could be seeking deep pressure touch. That's where someone kind of stands next to you, or they're leaning always against a table, or it could be something auditory or tactile. Yeah.
The acronym SCA, what does it stand for?
Oh, sexual chromosomal aneuploidy.
What's it again?
Oh, okay. I thought this was a common thing. I'm so glad you asked. Sexual chromosome aneuploidy, otherwise known as sex chromosome abnormality. Aneuploidy was a word I had to learn and look up. And so basically when we talk about this category, we're talking about kids who have XXY, XXYY, girls who have XXX, any kind of sex chromosome abnormality. Okay? Great question. I think that's as technical as I get. Okay, so let's talk about the functional implications of these difficulties that our children have. Some of our kids have feeding issues, and sometimes it's about, the textures of the food that they eat. Sometimes it's keeping the food in their mouth. This is kind of like younger kids. You notice that the food kind of goes everywhere. And then it also goes into utensils, that you notice that your child has a hard time using the fork, or when it's about 5, 6, when they're supposed to be learning how to spread with a knife, that they're a little more clumsy. Another thing could be that their play skills are really immature. So a lot of times kids around 3, 4, 5, 6, they like to play with dress up, or they like to build with Legos. Sometimes our kids don't like to do that because it's really hard for them. They don't feel the pieces as well. They don't have that strength to push and pull things onto the blocks and onto the Legos. In school, we see handwriting difficulties, and this really starts, early on, where the kid even has trouble copying shapes or putting a line and a circle together. It's just very difficult for them. We also see difficulties with social skills. We know that some of our kids are naturally shy, but they also have a hard time reading people's faces, understanding what is being said to them, and how do you interact with another child. On the playground, sometimes our kids kind of steer away from the climbing aspects, so the climbing ladders, or staying away from the swings because they're sensitive to the movements. And in PE, sometimes I hear, it's not that fun, it's hard. Because PE is a lot of movement, and it's a lot of learning new skills. And this can be really hard for a child who needs to practice skills. And PE sometimes doesn't allow you to do that enough. And then lastly, in music class, sometimes kids have a hard time using their hands together to coordinate using an actual musical instrument and playing that instrument on a specific rhythm. Out in the community, very often, kids will have a hard time playing in sports activities. Let it be t-ball, baseball, and it could be due to both a behavior thing or a sensory overload, as well as their motor skills not being like the other kids. So we'll talk about what activities, what can you do to help your kids? Because these activities are super important for development. These activities, the more you're involved in them, they help you with your gross motor skills. They help you with your fine motor skills. They help you with your social skills because you're interacting with other kids. And the other kids, if you use them correctly, can be a model for your child. And pairing up kids is a great way to build social skills. Also, communication is more than just verbal. It's written communication. Everybody has to learn how to write. Let it be cursive or print. But you have to have at least one form of legible writing because in our world today, even though we're very techy, you have to write down a phone message and you have to give the phone message to somebody, to the mom, to the dad, to the teacher, to the friend to read. And if they can't read it, the phone message is moot. Also, these activities help you gain strength, they help build your endurance, and the more you participate in them, the better the child's going to be. It's going to increase their self-esteem, and it's also going to help them developmentally. All right, so we're almost at the strategies for success. I'd like you to think of it more like a recipe. And these activities, there's 10 of them that we'll talk about, are sensory, motor, and nature. And the purpose of them is for you to take the activity and embed it into your routine, which means you may have to do it a couple of times. And a couple of times, I hear is about 50, to be honest. Because the point is the child has to get used to it. You're going to have to modify these activities to fit your family routine as well as to fit the child's motor needs, sensory needs, and social needs. So there is a little work involved. Some of the activities are really, really short. They're great for transitions. We'll talk about the home helper. It's a great way to put an activity that's going to be like, oh, we have to get inside the house. I need your help. We're going to go from one place to the other. And there's we'll talk about the sensory component to that. Others, they're a little bit longer. When we talk about baking activities, that could be 15 minutes, that could be an hour. It all depends on what you're baking. So you can really use these to your advantage of how you want to fill your time and how you want to incorporate them into your routine. Some of the activities are not for all kids. They're just not going to make sense for your child. The other pieces, and I'm going to do my best, is to really make sure that the activities I talk about also get to the later end ranges. So we're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And those, of course, you're going to have to modify a little bit. And then most importantly, keep it simple. If the activity gets too complex, and when we talk about complex, we're talking about materials, the environment. There's too much going on in the environment. The activity is not going to be successful. So think about what do you actually need? Is the environment conducive to doing this activity? And let's make it successful. All right, so strategies for success. So the first strategy is called the home helper. And we're talking about home helpers. This can be any age, okay? We're talking about different activities the child can do to help you because it's functional. Kids generally like to help around the house. Sometimes you might need a little reward in there, like a sticker chart or that they can play a certain game afterwards. But overall, these are great skills for kids to learn. Raking leaves, helping with cooking, or reading the recipe book if they're not going to help you cook. Carrying something in a wheelbarrow. And then we have someone here planting a tree or helping in the garden. So these home helper activities like carrying groceries or cleaning the table, what's actually happening here is the child is using their arms against resistance. When you carry groceries, it's pretty heavy. And that's great in two ways. One, you're building strength, okay? The other, and endurance, because you're building up your core, your belly muscles. The other piece is you're giving them some resistance, which is going to help them be more focused. So if your child is having a hard time staying on task, or the child is running around the car and you need them to come inside, give them something to carry and say, let's go from point A to point B and help me out. Cleaning tables is also a great activity. And this actually helps with writing, which is why I like when kids clean the table. Because when you clean a table, you generally have one hand on the table, your non-dominant hand, and you have the other hand as your doer hand. And what's happening here in this position of the assister hand putting all that weight on there is you're building strength into the shoulder girdle. And in order to have good handwriting, we'll talk about this a little later, you have to have good shoulder strength in order to have good hand movement. Okay? So cleaning tables, Cleaning windows, cleaning mirrors, great activity. Another thing that you can do on the cleaning mode, but also fun, is if you have a lot of plants in your house, you get a spray bottle. You go to Walmart, you get it for $1, fill it up with water, and younger kids can use 2 hands. Older kids, I would say by 5, 6, start encouraging 1 hand. And they spray your plants. They can also spray tables and clean them too. They can clean all their toys. This is a great activity. We're building hand strength. At the same time, we are building coordination, okay? Because the child's having to use their fingers in different ways. Another activity, making the bed. I'll admit, I don't think any child really likes to make the bed, but if you can get them to do it, it's really great for them because it uses, again, a lot of strength to pull those sheets. Cleaning up the play area. Again, spray bottle, towel, also just physically taking those blocks and moving them, putting them into a specific area and calling it the block area, putting all your books in a certain area. Really great activities. It requires strength and endurance, and that's what these kids need. And while you're out in the community, I have it as a reminder here, you're out in the community, you're out grocery shopping, have your child push the cart. Because again, they're being a helper, and they're really building up strength as they're doing that. So other activities, helping to wash a pet, and folding laundry. Sometimes folding laundry is hard for kids, but they can definitely push the basket across the floor to go from point A to point B. They can help put the laundry into the dryer. Okay, those are great activities where you've got some weight and you're using your arms to accomplish a task. All right, strategy number 2, bring back play, being outside. Being outside is really important for kids. There are lots of activities that kids can do outside, being out on a playground, climbing, using ladders, going up and down slides and stairs. All these activities are really important to build up the leg muscles and also the arm muscles and also coordination. Because when you think about going up a ladder or going up a playground, jungle gym, you're using opposite arm and leg motions. And that's important because when you walk upstairs, you're using alternate leg movements. When you're getting into a car, all of a sudden, one leg is outside of the car, the other leg is inside of the car. So you're really helping the body learn how to separate arm and leg movements, which is really key for coordination. The other piece about being on the playground is that it's a social atmosphere. Now let's take an example of a child who isn't so keen about being on the playground. How can you facilitate them wanting to be on the playground? Find their friend or a sibling that can be a model for them. And you're going to have to structure it that one child gets to be the leader, and that for 5 minutes that child is going to say, oh, we're going to go on the swings, and everybody goes on the swings. And then the next 5 minutes, your child gets to decide what they're going to do. And it may be playing in the sand. But this way, your child gets to experience different parts of the playground, and that's really important for them developmentally. Other games outside that you can play, Red Rover. I don't know if you guys remember that game, but you know, where everyone holds their hands, and basically it's a running game where you have to run through people's arms. Another fun game that's easily to adapt is hopscotch. Hopscotch can be 10 blocks of jumping, or it can be 5 blocks of jumping. And it can be just jumping. You don't have to incorporate the beanbag where you have to stand on one foot to pick it up. Think about success, building blocks. So this child, you could actually end the hopscotch board right here, and that could still be a fun game for them. And it's social. You can do it with other kids. 2 other games to play. Around 1st grade, 2nd, 3rd grade, a lot of playgrounds at schools have Foursquare. So teaching your child how to play Foursquare, how to use their hands to bounce the ball appropriately. And also if you have access to a tire swing. Tire swings are great because if you've ever been on one, you really have to use a lot of arm strength. You also have to use a lot of belly strength. And so what happens is the child gets onto the tire swing and they're swinging, and then they're having fun, And then when they get off, you can say, do you know another way that you could be on the tire swing? And another fun way is to let them hang upside down like an iguana. And that really builds on arm strength and belly strength and leg strength. And every kid likes to be an iguana. All right, so our third strategy is pretend play is free. So this is really, again, looking at children around ages 3 and up, really encouraging them to look at the people in their world and model after them. This is a great way to learn a lot of different skills. So thinking about a restaurant, making menus, and serving out the menus and then pretending to make the food. Mother and baby activities are a lot of fun. Playing teacher. What child does not like to be the teacher? And then, of course, firefighter, policeman, and so forth. Dress up is a great way to build skills. And the reason why is the kid is ready to use their imagination. They're ready to be involved with another child, to at least follow along on what the play pattern is going to be. And the point of putting on these clothes is it's a great way at getting at fine motor skills. The buttoning, the zipping, the lacing, the putting on of the clothes, taking off of the clothes. Things that sometimes are really difficult for kids. And so this naturally gets at those skills. The other great thing is you can make your own dress-up activities. Take a hat, take a paper bag, and decorate it, and then wear it. And pretend that you're marching around the house to music. It's a lot of fun, and it's great for kids to see that they can actually do things with their hands successfully and use them in their play. So here are some examples. Here's a little child being a firefighter, so he's got everything hooked up as he's hosing down probably the grass, I'm assuming. Here we have some Star Wars and Batman people. We have a little girl. She reminds me of a farmer girl with a little bandana on her head. And then every girl, I think, pretty much likes to be a princess at some point. So you don't necessarily have to buy the Snow White outfit, but even just getting a piece of lycra material that you can go to any fabric store for about $4. And I think this really was the best dress-up thing I ever bought. And you give it to a child, the lycra material becomes a cape, it becomes a dress, it becomes a hat, it becomes anything you want it to be. And so sometimes you do have to model those things for kids. But once they see what you can do with it, they really can expand their play skills. And that's what you want. Because when you're expanding play, you're expanding socialization, you're expanding language, as well as the motor skills. So this is one of my favorite strategies, baking time, because you end up with a tasty treat. And every child likes a little something tasty. So when we talk about baking time, we're talking about activities where you're having to use your hands and you're kneading dough. Okay, baking bread is a great activity for kids because they're using their hand strength. It's a good deep pressure tactile activity where the kids are getting a lot of tactile input. And at the end, it's bread. Who doesn't like bread, right? What you can also do with the bread is you can add in raisins. You know, something small, something tasty. If your kid's not allergic to nuts, you can put nuts in there. But let's say all of a sudden you've got too many raisins. A great way to work on fine motor skills, they have to use a pincer grasp and pull out all the raisins. Oh well. All right, so another way to improve fine motor skills, using a rolling pin. So you're making cookies now, or you're rolling out Play-Doh. Rolling pins are great, especially if the child is standing, because they're using their hands on the rolling pin together, simultaneously working on coordination. It also builds up on shoulder strength. And then if you incorporate cookie cutters into it, again, the child has to push down. So we're getting some good hand strength activity into the hands and into the shoulder with the cookie cutters. And I don't know if you can see this, but here are just two kids. They've got their cupcakes here. And you have a little dialogue going on, probably about how tasty the cupcakes are. So again, we're talking about language and socialization. So another great activity is making pudding or anything that requires stirring. When a child is stirring, what happens is one hand becomes the assister hand, the other hand becomes the doer hand. Again, we're talking about coordination, our body doing two different activities. Another great thing to do is making homemade Play-Doh. And Play-Doh, you can make it edible. You can make it have different scents. You can have, I said the edible piece because that's peanut butter. And then you can make it seasonal. So when I was working in one of my schools, every October, November, we had pumpkin Play-Doh. And in the spring, we had peanut butter Play-Doh. We did not have a peanut butter allergy at our school, so it was okay. So different activities that you can do with Play-Doh is a treasure hunt. Now, usually when I go see some of my kids, I bring my Play-Doh and I forget to bring my treasure items. So I go into my wallet and I put pennies, because I always have a ton of pennies. And I put the pennies into the treasure hunt, and they love it because they think they're going to keep the pennies. But they're pulling out all the pennies. And what's happening here is they're kneading the dough, so we're getting some good hand strength in there. And then they're pulling out the pennies, and again, we're working on pincer grasp. Okay, so it's really great. So we're working on coordination, we're working on motor planning, or what's known as praxis. The tasks are functional. Baking, very, very functional. And it's tasty. So here's that example of bilateral coordination where one hand is doing and the other hand is stabilizing. And of course here we have a little language going on because I think that little child wants to eat whatever's in there. And then the other picture is of some children making some cookies. All right, so any questions about home activities? Okay, so now we'll move on to the community, and we're going to be talking about sports, but beyond competition, because sports should not always be about competition. So for younger kids, what I generally recommend to families is find a tumbling class, find a gymnastics class, find a fun movement class. And the point is movement and being with other kids and really just work on socialization. That's the point of it. Even being in a pool is great for kids, 3, 4, 5. Around 6, we can start making a little bit more competitive with swimming and actually have them involved with swimming lessons. But before that, really kids aren't ready for swimming lessons because they don't really understand the idea of what's being asked for them, but they can definitely have fun in a pool, and that's important. As they get older, you're going to want to find sports that are more individual in nature, but also can have a team aspect. So the activities I generally recommend are biking, being part of a swim team, taekwondo or wrestling, and then running. Those activities, there is a team aspect, so you're working on cooperation with your peers. You're collaborating with others. You're building social relationships. But the actual coordination piece of it, it's individual. Okay, so the child will see progress as they continue to practice and be part of that team. And because they're sports, they're going to be naturally working on endurance, strength, coordination. I do think that being involved in some sort of after-school activity, and I call it sports, but really it's being part of an after-school activity, it has a sense of healthy competition. And when the child sees that they can be successful, it builds upon their self-esteem, their psychosocial skills, and has a positive effect. So we're looking at both a motor aspect, a social aspect, but also a psychological impact that's positive. So here's just 2 pictures of some younger kids. Taekwondo is a really great activity over here to the right, and then some kids here at the pool using those swimmies. Those are a lot of fun, so that way we can get across the pool very quickly. So I have to talk about the Wii because it comes up from time to time with my families. And I have a love-hate relationship with the Wii. I am not a fan of video games at all, but I do see somewhat of a value in the Wii because it works on overall body coordination. Wii, because of its nature, will promote some socialization because the friend down the street has a Wii, and socialization is wonderful for our kids. So if they have to play Wii, try to encourage the games like the Olympics, where there's an actual sport involved. there's also something, oh, there's like Wii tennis, Wii bowling. There's 2 different discs that I'm thinking about that have that kind of information. Because of the Wii, it has this natural, healthy competition aspect because you're playing against a friend. It also has a good motor aspect in that you are having to use your body in different motor sequences to accomplish the goal. But do not be fooled by the Wii. Because the Wii is a computer, basically, the child's really using their visual system to change their body movements. So they're relying on vision to tell them, okay, I need to move one hand back and the other hand forward so I can play archery. And I need to get this marker in a certain amount of place, and I'm going to rely on my eyes to tell me how to move my arms as opposed to feeling it and using my body alone. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you think it does, okay, so I don't have to go anywhere.
Instead of relying on strength to tell you how far you're pulling the bowl, you're using a visual cue to tell you.
Exactly, exactly. You're not relying on strength. You're not even feeling the actual archery, I don't know what it's called, but the band. Okay, so it's not working totally on strength. Some of the programs, there's a balance program, I forgot what it was. I know there's with gymnastics. Yeah, there's a balance form and there's also a balance beam game. Again, you're using your eyes as opposed to using your muscles to work on your balance skills. And so when I work with these kids and I tell them, oh, balance on one foot, like a tree. So we're going to do a little yoga today. They can do it with their eyes open, no problem. But once you take away the vision, they have no idea how to use their belly muscles and their back muscles to keep them upright in that tree position. So therefore, the Wii only has, it's a 50% benefit. But I like the social aspect of it. There is an article, because remember I have the love-hate relationship with the Wii, from the British Medicine, the Journal for British Medicine that came out in 2007, that again also said the Wii, a lot of people think it's great for exercise. They really found that it wasn't. That really kids were only burning up 2% more of their energy. So just a little bit of research to throw in there. All right, so we're ready for a bonus strategy. A bonus strategy of volunteering. Volunteering, yes.
Can I ask a question about sports?
Sure.
What's your feeling on horseback for older kids?
I think horseback riding is great. And there's 2 types of horseback riding. There's therapeutic riding, and then there's regular horseback riding that you're just playing with, and then there's something else. I don't know that kind. Dressage? Oh, okay. That might be why. But I think any kind of interaction with horses or any kind of, if you're part of a farm, is really great for kids for a couple of reasons. They learn how to appreciate the animal. They learn how to take care of the animal. And then there is the therapeutic benefit of actually being on the horse, because it does require you to have some good body mechanics, working on endurance, postural control, and coordination. So there are a lot of great benefits to horseback riding. Thank you. Any other activities out there that your kids are involved with? Jay?
Just to throw it in
Yeah.
to the families, is that one thing that kids love to do that I hope we encourage families to do is to go in the backyard and make your own obstacle course.
Yes.
My son is 13 now, and that's one of his favorite activities. They will take tables and chairs and pillows in the house and outdoors, and it's a combination of a lot of planning, a lot of praxis, because they're actually doing it, but they have created the thing though that you have to agree on, and that's one thing, is that you have to go through the obstacle course. Because the child's going to do it, they're going to want you to do it. So you create it, they create it, that's another, and it's really kind of a sport activity.
It is.
And it's a great activity.
I'm going to add on to that because I actually love obstacle courses, but I kind of forget that kids do it at home. I do it so much in like therapy sessions. Once they've mastered the obstacle course and you time them so that way they can see how fast they go and how slow, once they've mastered it that way, have them go through it backwards from end to beginning, and then actually from start to finish with their eyes closed. Once you have occluded vision, they totally rely on body awareness. And that's actually one of the goals that I write for a lot of my kids that have motor planning difficulties or coordination difficulties is that they have to do a simple obstacle course forwards, backwards, and with their eyes closed in a certain amount of time. And the best part is they build it. So if they build it, they must go through it. Yes?
But can we also get them to clean that up?
Oh, of course, because,
It's like 10 things. But what I wanted to say was the swimming lessons.
yeah,
I think there's a lot of value in swimming lessons even younger than 6.
yes, definitely you can introduce them.
You're just going to realize that they're not going to be Olympic swimmers by the time they're 5, but I think they learn more about pool safety and it's a great activity for them. Lessons keep everybody going on a weekly basis. If you just swim, you don't necessarily always go every week or 4 times a week and stuff. I've done that with my daughter, and this little guy's also in swimming lessons. Yeah, he's not really an Olympic swimmer, but kids
Yeah.
today, even ones without issues, they don't understand pool safety at all in the U.S. I've done very well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely having kids involved in swimming at the pool in some sort of organized way, I think is great at whatever age. Sometimes what I get from families is that it's not a good mix, and I don't think I'll touch upon it a little later, is you have to find the right mix of the teacher and the right group, because so your child can be successful.
Pretty small at those ages. The classes are really tiny.
Right.
It's a really great activity. It's physical and it's social, and they learn about the safety and all that.
Yeah.
It's just really important.
Yes, it is a great activity to have them be a part of. Yes.
Just for the clarify,
Yeah.
I'm a grandma, and that's fine, but my daughter's PT program, they have acrotherapy, which is axons.
Mhm.
So they did one day, one day session of PT and one day session of acrotherapy, which prepared him for the swimming, and now he's 6. Definitely ready to go into full-fledged swimming lessons, so that was very nice.
Definitely, definitely. When we talk about PE, hopefully we'll get there. One of the strategies is talk to the PE teacher about what are the activities that are going to be done throughout the year. So 1, you can practice them at home. 2, if your child has OT and PT services, because what sometimes can happen is after 7, 8, 9, your child may not qualify in the educational setting for OT, PT. But if they do, have the OT and PT work on those PE skills. It is very appropriate, at least in occupational therapy, to be doing activities that are done in the natural routine. So yeah, practice is important for our kids. There was one other comment over here, a question.
I was just in my son's too, and we have he's in physical therapy, and they said the swimming lessons are awesome to help build.
Yeah, yeah, swimming, I guess I should clarify. Formal swimming lessons coming a little bit later, but definitely having them in swimming activities as early as possible is important. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Quickly going through my bonus strategy, volunteering. Volunteering is really important for kids because it shows, regardless of what kind of kid you are, if you have a diagnosis or not, that you can always give back. And so there is this natural sense of, I did something for someone else. And it may take a little while for them to recognize that, and you have to talk about it with your kid, but it's a great way for them to really understand that they can be valued by others. So going to a soup kitchen, great sensory motor activity because someone's got to carry all those pots and pans and someone's got to serve all those people. So we're still talking about great coordination activities. If you live in the city, we have a lot of city block cleanups where everybody on the block gets together and they have to clean up the neighborhood. And just planting a tree. You know, there are a lot of parks out there that during the springtime, people are planting trees to make the park pretty. Okay, so now we'll talk about the school environment. And this is for younger kids thinking about school success. It's pre-K and play. So prior to kindergarten, it's really important for kids to be a part of some sort of social group, some sort of play group, either a mommy and me group, they go to pre-K, because it's about socialization. They need to start seeing models. They need to start interacting with kids so they can kind of gain those skills. A lot of great activities come from, I'll give you, this book is at the end, it's called Handy Learning. Kids at a young age need to start manipulating. And a lot of kids with low tone and poor strength have a hard time using their fingers to complete dexterity activities. So, For $35, Susan Thompson, who's an OT, has this great book called Handy Learning. And there are all these activities that it's designed for teachers because they have like learning objectives, but they're great activities for you to do anytime. The other piece about this book, which is why I really, really like it, is the first 15 pages talks about why hand skills are important and how can you help your child develop good hand strength. So if anything, it's one of my favorite books. She has a great website as well, Handy Learning. Yes?
Just wanted to let you know that on the sheet it says hand
Oh.
learning versus handy learning.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. There are a couple typos. They're correct up here. So Handy Learning is the actual website. Another great activity to do with kids, Highlights, the magazine. It's something that I don't hear a lot from my kids, my friends' kids, that they're not doing it, but I like Highlights a lot because it has mazes, it has games, it has clues. It also has a lot of crossword puzzles, and it's developmentally appropriate. And this magazine can actually go with your child up through adolescence.
And this, highlights is actually spelled, on the book, it's actually spelled correctly, highlights.
It is spelled correctly.
Yeah,
So I have it incorrect.
I see them all the time in doctor's offices and stuff.
The other piece is drawing. I hear a lot of parents tell me at age 4, age 3, my child's not writing their name. And I go, that's really great. I don't want your child to be writing their name. I am all about play. Writing will come, I mean, if you remember when we were going to school, writing didn't happen until first grade. Unfortunately, writing now has entered the some preschool curriculums and some kindergarten curriculums, but we can't help that. But what we can do is help our kids. So, my favorite activity is you get some new crayons and you tell the child, I want you to break all of the crayons. They love it. All right? So you're breaking your crayons, and the point of breaking your crayons is they're now about this big, which requires them to use their inner hand muscles to actually use them to write. Markers, get rid of them. Okay, markers are too heavy for preschoolers, they're too heavy for first graders. All they do is they develop poor grass patterns. They don't know how to manipulate that giant thing. Okay? Even the mini markers I don't like because, again, markers have a different feel when you're writing than a crayon does. And you really want them to feel what they're writing. So the more, I don't want to say bumpy or edgy because that is what happens with the crayons, it's not as fluid, the more inputs are going to get into their hand about what they're doing with their hand. And that's what you're looking for. The other thing is break away from the table. Not every kid when they're young has to write at a table. That's old school. Have your child stand up at the table, have that non-dominant hand hold the paper, and let them color as much as they want if you use the table. What you can do instead is have your kid lay down on the floor. Take the paper, put it on the floor, and have them color on the floor. Because what's happening is, I think it's my next picture. Nope, it's a little bit later. Is they're building up strength in their shoulders. They're having to use their muscles to keep their head up against gravity. And they're building up that shoulder strength. The other piece is have them draw on an easel. I did write the word wall, and I've had teachers tell me not to recommend that to parents because the kid might actually write on the wall. But if you have an easel, or if you just take some paper and put it over your door, and they can color on that at any time, again, it puts the shoulders in great alignment for coloring and writing or building up strength, and it also puts the wrist and hand in a proper position to help them use those inner hand muscles to use that crayon. Okay, so some other ideas. Other things that you can do, chalk. Chalk in the sidewalk, lots of fun. Again, working on shoulder strengthening, working on hand muscles, and that spray bottle comes into play. You can also have them paint with water. Wash your car, paint the house. Because water, it dries up. Nobody can see it. So writing made a little bit easier. So the first thing once your child is writing, and this is, kindergarten, first grade, even before if your child wants to draw, this is important, is positioning. You want to make sure that they have a table and a chair that fits them properly. And properly means their feet touch the floor. Their back is against the chair, and they look like they're in a 90-90 position. All right, 90 at the knee, 90 at the ankle, because it's flat against the floor, 90 at the hip. And therefore, the shoulder will be in 90. So everything is 90 degrees. The other thing that I sometimes recommend families is taking a 3-ring binder. And you know with a 3-ring binder, there are the rings, okay? So if you put the rings away from your belly, so farthest point away, it makes a slanted easel, and the child can write on that. You can buy an easel for $30. I tend to use a large 3-ring binder for $6. And by writing on an easel or an angled surface, that child's wrist is in a great position to use the pencil in a more appropriate manner. Okay, so that's one of my tricks, is a 3-ring binder. Pencils, a lot of times I hear pencils break. I like mechanical pencils, but you're going to have to find a mechanical pencil with a thick piece of lead in it, and that sometimes can be a little bit harder. Once the kid's in cursive, I tend to recommend ballpoint pens, because with cursive, it's all about fluidity, and a ballpoint pen is more fluid than a pencil. And now that they have ballpoint pens that are erasable, it's actually an okay thing for teachers. In terms of writing, a good program that I like to use is Handwriting Without Tears. A lot of schools nationally have adopted it. It kind of takes out the frills of writing where there are no extra loops. It's all about lines. A great game to play in the car, or just any time, is Mad Libs. I don't know if you guys remember them, but you can get them kind of at Bed Bath & Beyond or some dollar stores. But what's great about Mad Libs is that they have a certain place to write the word, so it automatically works on sizing and spacing of the letters. So it's a great way to work on handwriting, and also crossword puzzles, because you can only put 1 letter per box. So again, it works on spacing. Sometimes our kids do benefit from occupational therapy. From my experiences working in the school systems, OTs generally are called when there's a grasp issue and a handwriting issue. So when we're talking about grasp, we're talking about immature grasp, but eventually if the child doesn't respond to, I just lost the word, one of those grips, do not worry, because research has shown that you don't have to always have the perfect mature grasp to be an efficient writer. Okay? So if your child doesn't like the grips that the OT is giving them, don't feel so bad about not using them. What I do recommend, though, and I have seen a lot of success with, is switching the types of paper that I use. And so this is something to talk about with the OT. If a child has problems with spacing and sizing of letters, sometimes they can't see where exactly they're supposed to put the letter, how big it's supposed to be in relationship to other letters. So there's paper out there that has different parts of the paper shaded. I'm trying to think. Let me just draw it for you, because I think it's just so much easier. So this is one of the types of paper. This is regular paper. There's paper out there where the bottom half is shaded. And what happens is the child has a constant visual cue as to where to put that letter. There is paper out there, I'm sure some of you have seen it, where they've got the house and the roof, and then this is the basement. Or there's the sunshine here, and here's the green grass where the flowers grow. There's all sorts of visual cues that they use. To me, these are a little bit more confusing because they don't stay with the child the whole time. The difference is if you find the paper that it's half shaded, the cue is there constantly. And usually after about 3 months of consistently using this paper, I can transition the child to regular paper easier, because they understand how to write their letters. So even if you Google half-shaded paper, there's it'll come up, but TheraPro, THERAPRO, is a company that sells it, and I think there's an OT by the name of Ellen. If you even just Google OT Ellen paper, she'll probably come up because she's the creator of the paper. So think beyond the utensil and look at the paper as well. So here's that position again that I was telling you. The girl's laying on the floor. You can see that she's working on shoulder strengthening, and here she is, sorry, coloring. And then someone over there standing at a chalkboard, again, working on those pencil activities. All right, school success. Learning styles. Learning styles are really important because you want to have the just right fit for your child. So try to get to know what your child's strengths are. A lot of kids really benefit from visual cues. They are not language-based learners. They need to see it and feel it. So practice makes perfect. Another thing that really helps with learning is alternating between high-low activities. And the reason for that is sometimes kids, if they've been sitting still for 15 minutes and they've been really into an activity, they can't do another activity that's super intense. So they need that break. So sometimes doing those home helper activities, or we'll talk about heavy work in a second, those activities are great transition activities to get the brain flowing again. And then the last thing is breaking down sequences into chunks. So what I mean by that is a really good skill for kids to learn is jumping rope. But jumping rope is sometimes really hard for kids to understand how to do that. So what I tell kids to do, and this is as early as 4 years old, is I give them a jump rope and I set it up for them. I show them how to use the handles, and I place the rope behind them and I say two things. Rope over, I make them look at the rope because now that it's over, jump over. Rope over, jump over. So this way, it's concrete, it's simple, and they understand what's expected of them. And then the speed will increase with time. All right, we're going to run through these last two really quick, so we're running out of time. Just a couple things about PE. I've alluded to this. Really talk with the teacher about what is expected in PE and what your goals are for your child, and practice them. And at home, feel free to practice those activities, or at least, you know, the games similar to basketball, like pig, where there's like a leader and someone throws the ball and the other person comes into their space and they have to throw the ball from the same location. Most importantly, track your child's progress. Be excited about your kid running and see how fast they can do it, and the next time see if they do it even faster. Because if they see the progress, they're going to be excited about participating. All right, heavy work. This is probably the most important strategy because I think it's a great way to help kids focus and help them keep attending. So heavy work is activities that provides a resistance to muscles. They allow you to work on strength and power and coordination, but they also have this attention component that's really important. Activities include pushing activities. So rearranging furniture is a great activity for kids to do. Pulling activities, getting them onto a scooter board on their belly and having them pull themselves across the house. Animal walks, bear walks. Any kind of animal walk is going to require them, and this is for younger kids, to really push themselves against the floor and put some good weight into their hands. Chores are also great. And then my favorite activity that I tell teachers to do is have a first aid bag and make your child, well, you have to have like 2 or 3 because many kids are going to want to be the first aid bag helper. Put on the backpack, and it's giving them some weight, so as they walk from class to class, they're going to stay more organized and they're going to stay with the group. And it's very functional because it will have water bottles in it, it'll have the Band-Aids, it'll have the bandages and Kleenex. What else do you need? All right, so here's some just examples of kids pushing each other, some chores. And then also, if you have a wagon around the house, fill it up with things and they can pull it around and it'll help you get things from one place to another. Bonus strategy. On your way out the door, as you go to the next activity, next presentation, pick up a piece of candy, because candy sucking activities help with attention. They help organize you. They help really feed your nervous system when you're feeling a little dysregulated. So I put up different examples, healthy and non-healthy snacks that you can incorporate into your routine. Sometimes our kids do benefit from occupational therapy. Here are some reasons why. If you don't know, or if the teacher says, oh, I don't think so, you can always ask for a screen. I think a screen is a very fair way to go before a full-blown evaluation. if the teacher isn't willing to do that, or the school isn't willing to do that. All right, one last thing is that how do you find about resources? Now, I'm in Philadelphia, so I can't tell you what's going on in California, but I know that I can call an OT clinic and say, I want my child to participate in swimming lessons, or I want them to be a part of a soccer group. Where should I send my child so I can be successful? So call the OT clinic in your area, or talk to your OT or your special ed teacher, your special ed services, and ask about what are the after-school activities that are not so competitive, but my child will be successful in. And that's really important, because you want them to have fun, but you also want them to gain those skills. Okay? So here's some recommended readings. Again, it's Handy Learning with a Y. And a summary of the strategies. And remember, have fun, keep it simple, and keep your kids developmentally fit. All right? And that's it.